Shavua Tov, everyone. Welcome back to the last shiur of Shmuel Aleph. I don't know how many of you have been with us since the beginning. David Marks definitely has been with us, I think, since the beginning. I think the Westbrooks have been with us since the beginning. They've got staying power, these people, because we've been going for 4 years and 8 months. We started in January 2020, right at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, when Zoom was all very fresh to us. And I'm glad that Stanley has joined us today, because I think we need to give a thank you to Stanley, because he was the one that introduced me to Zoom. I'd never heard of it. And right at the beginning of the pandemic, Stanley was the one that said, why don't you do your shiurim on Zoom? And of course, I'd never even heard of Zoom. For me, Zoom was just a tray for ice lolly when I was a kid. I can see that David Marks also had his tray for ice lollies when he was a kid, by that little smile. Yeah, so thank you to Stanley. If it hadn't been for Stanley, we wouldn't have been doing all this for 4 years and 8 months. I didn't count up the number of shiurim, but it's quite a lot. We haven't done it every single week, but more or less every week for over 4 years. So we're going to get today to the end of Shmuel Aleph. But it's a little bit of a damp squib, to tell you the truth, because, as you probably know, Shmuel Aleph and Shmuel Bet is really one long sefer. Okay? And the only reason it was split up was because it was felt to be too long and too unwieldy for people. And so the split was made somewhat arbitrarily by the non-Jewish scholars of the Septuagint. It is not a Jewish split of the book. And you will see in a couple of weeks' time, when we do chapter 1 of Shmuel Bet, that a better place to have split the books would have been after chapter 1 of Shmuel Bet. Chapter 1 of Shmuel Bet really belongs at the end of Shmuel Aleph. And if you or I were splitting it up, we'd have split it up differently. But this is the way they did it, and it's sort of what's the word? It's sort of it's a curve on. Yeah, it curves on. And so Shmuel Aleph chapter 31 is the last chapter of the book, and we have arrived at the 4 years and 8 months. I just said to my son, who is here. Can you hear me?
Oh, your voice is cracking.
Okay, give Michael Kraus is my normal thumbs up man. So give me the thumbs up, and Leslie, I'll appoint you my thumbs up man. When you can hear me properly, you give me the thumbs up. Okay, good. All right. So I just said to my son, I'm just about to go and give the shiur, and he saw me come up with my l'chaim bottle. He says, "What, you're going to drink in the shiur?" I said, "No, at the end of it, we're making a siyum." I said, 4 years and 8 months, we've finished Shmuel Aleph. He said, "Well, it's not great going, that," he says, "but I suppose you got there in the end." So he's probably right, isn't great going. But for us, it's not quantity, it's quality. Oh, yes, Peter's got his Lafroig. Excellent. And I hope you've all got something there ready. So let's get stuck into chapter 31. I'll share the screen with you straight away. And there we go. You should have the screen now. Yeah, good. Okay. I suppose we ought to just nip back to chapter 30 and see where we left off. Chapter 30, we left off with David came to Ziklag, having gone and rescued his wives and everybody else, and he shared out the spoil. Remember, there are 2 stories going along here in parallel. There's the story of Shaul and the story of David. And in a way, they're a bit like a scale. As Shaul's star falls, David's star rises. And we're seeing the way the Shmuel Aleph is put together. The author has very cleverly woven in the two stories side by side, and we can see how Shaul is coming to the end of his life, the end of his reign, and David's star is rising. David is about to become the king and fulfill his destiny. So we've got these two stories going on in parallel. David, if you remember, had tried to wheedle his way into the Philistine army to be a Trojan horse or a fifth column or whatever you want to call it, but had failed because the Philistine officers were having none of it. They realized that David was, in fact, not to be trusted. However, he was sent back to Ziklag, and while he was away, the Amalekites had gone into Ziklag and taken captive and taken hostage all the women and children. Sadly, a story that we are too familiar with. David, however, unlike we have been able to do so far, David went back and into Amalek country and rescued all the hostages and brought them back safely. And that is where we left chapter 30. And in chapter 31, which is a short chapter, we return to the main story, if you like, which is the story of Shaul, battling the Plishtim. And so let's start chapter 31. Uflishtim nilchamim beYisrael, and the Philistines were battling the Israelites. Vayanusu anshe Yisrael, and the men of Israel fled. Where do you have that word vayanusu? Where do we have that word in davening?
Vayanusu, vayandu.
Again, Leslie, I can only see the top of your head. Alter your camera. There we go.
Saying vayanusu, vayandu. I'm thinking along the wrong lines.
Vayanusu.
Oyevecha.
Thank you, Anita. Well done. Vayanusu oyevecha. Your enemies shall flee. Where do we say that, Anita?
Just when you put the Sifrei Torah back in the ark.
I'm surprised you know that.
Why?
Because you're normally in the kitchen doing the kiddush. But you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. When we sing it, Vayanusu oyevecha mipanecha ki mitzion tetzei Torah. And so, yeah, Vayanusu. Here, there, where we sing it, it's Vayanusu oyevecha. Your enemies will flee. Here, this is us fleeing. Vayanusu anshe Yisrael. And the men of Israel fled mipnei Plishtim, from the face of the Plishtim. And this was a very bad situation. Vayiplu chalalim bahar hagilboa. Chalalim. What's a chalal?
Dead body.
It's a dead body, yeah, a corpse. Vayiplu chalalim. And in this context, yeah, in this context, it means the casualties. It means the slain soldiers. Vayiplu chalalim bahar el Gilboa, and the casualties fell on the mountain of Gilboa. Vayidbeku plishtim et Shaul ve'et banav, and it's translated here. And the Philistines overtook Saul and his sons. But that isn't what the word means. Vayidbeku. I'm just having a look in the Koren. The Koren translates it.
They call it upward.
They cling to.
No,
Cling to, Peter says. What do you say, Hannah?
Catch up with.
Catch up with. Okay. What
in the
does
art scroll, it says concentrated.
Concentrated. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I think of all of those, personally, I prefer the Koren. the Koran says, and the Philistines closed in on. What's the root of that word? Vayidbaku.
Dalet, the
Tabek.
big. Yeah.
Yeah, Daled Bet Kuf. And there's a modern Hebrew word called devek.
Yeah.
What's devek?
Glue.
Glue.
Glue. That's right.
Glue.
Glue. Glue. What a funny word if you think about it. Isn't that a funny English word? Glue. I never thought about it before. Anyway, glue. Devek is glue. And what does glue do?
Sticks to you.
Sticks things together. So, Vayidbaku Pelishtim et Shaul Bet Banav. The Pelishtim stuck to. They got very close to. When you stick something together, it becomes very close. You approximate them to one another, don't you? When you glue something, which is why I prefer the Koran, which says closed in on. The Philistines closed in on Shaul. I think that's a more accurate translation. Yes, David, you're waggling your pen. That usually means you've got something to add.
Yeah. You've got this in the story of Lavan chasing Yaakov via Bekotor,
Oh, okay.
closing in on Yaakov.
Excellent. Okay, I hadn't picked up on that. Very good. That must have been in what Parashat Vayetze, something like that.
Vayetze, yeah.
Okay, so Lavan is chasing Yaakov and he catches up with him. Same word. Very good. Thank you for that. So the Pelishtim come close to Shaul and his sons, and then quite simply the pasuk says, no messing about, no flowery language here. Vayaku Pelishtim et Yehonatan ve'et Avinadav ve'et Malkishua b'nei Shaul. And they killed, the Pelishtim killed Jonathan, Avinadav, and Malkishua, Saul's sons. All three of them fell on the same day. Now, this isn't a surprise to us, is it? Even if we hadn't read this chapter, that was not a surprise to us, was it? Why not? Why was it not a surprise to us, even if we hadn't read this chapter?
Yeah.
Because
Prophesying.
they were at war.
Say that again, Hannah.
Because they were at war.
Because they
And
were
when
at
you're in
war, okay.
war, you kill
Peter's more on the right
enemy.
lines.
It was prophecy by the witch, by the.
Yes, it was a prophecy by the witch. Well, not quite by the witch, but
No.
via the witch. It was a prophecy by Shmuel, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Whom the witch had summoned on behalf of Shaul. I think it was chapter 28. Let's go and have a little look at chapter 28. There we go. There's chapter 28. Let's see if we can find it. And it says, right, so Shmuel says, why have you woken me up? And Shaul says, I want to know what's the story. And he says, here we go. Verse 19. This is Shmuel speaking to Shaul from the grave. Vayiten Hashem gamet Yisrael imecha beyad Plishtim. The Lord will also deliver Israel with you into the hands of the Plishtim. Umachar, and tomorrow, ata uvanecha imi. You and your sons will be with me. And where was Shmuel?
In heaven.
Yeah, liegt in dread, as they say. Yeah, liegt in dread. He was lying in the ground. He was dead. So he said quite simply, you and your sons are going to be with me tomorrow. You're going to die tomorrow. So it was not a surprise to us to read that in the beginning of our chapter 31, that the three sons of Shaul died, because Shmuel had prophesied this just the day before. Now, most of the Mefarshim are very positive about Shaul here at the end of his life. And as you know, and as we've found out for the last four years or so, Shaul has not covered himself in glory for his entire career. The majority of his career has been a very negative experience. But at the end here, he redeems himself very much so in the eyes of the commentators. And I've asked a few times during the past 4 years why anybody would want to call their kid Shaul, because it does not come over as a great character. And perhaps this last chapter is the reason why people call their children Shaul, because at the end, Shaul was a very heroic character. Shaul could quite easily have run off and not taken the battle on. He knew he was going to die the next day. He accepted the prophecy from Shmuel. It wasn't that he didn't believe Shmuel, but he went with dignity. He fought bravely to the end, and as we'll see in a few minutes, he dies with dignity as well. And it's that ultimately, that bravery and that dignity that Shaul shows right at the end of his life, which, if you like, saves his reputation and seals his legacy as a Gibor Yisrael, as a hero of Israel. So let's carry on and see where we get to with this. V'tichbad hamilchama el Shaul. V'tichbad. You can see the root of that word, which is kaved, meaning heavy. And the translation's a good translation here. And the battle fell heavy upon Shaul. So it's a very evocative phrase, that the battle fell heavy on Shaul. Vayimtsaehu hamorim anashim bakeshet. Okay, hamorim. What's a more?
Teacher.
Teacher.
I knew you were going to say that.
Teacher.
That's why
No,
I asked you.
Guide.
That's why I asked you. What is a rifle in Hebrew?
Roveh.
Roveh. Okay. And how do you say to shoot in Hebrew?
Lirot.
Okay. Lirot. Okay. And what is the root of that word? Lirot.
Yud Resh.
Hey.
Yud Resh
Hey.
Hey.
Yud Resh Hey. Okay. Yud Resh Hey. Yore. To shoot. So here, this is what this word is. A more is spelt like this. He's not a teacher. How do you spell more as a teacher?
Mem Vav Resh.
Mem Vav Resh Hey.
Okay.
Mem Vav Resh Hey.
And how do you spell a shooter?
Yoreh.
Mem Vav Resh Aleph.
Yud Vav Resh Hey.
Yoreh, that's the one. Okay. So here you've got Hamorim, the one who shoots. This is a shooter. Hamorim here is a shooter. Okay, from the word lirot. So Vayimtsaehu Hamorim, the shooter, the shooters, plural, found him. Found who? Shaul. And when you're shooting, and if it says, if you find your mark when you're shooting, what does that mean?
Get your target.
Yeah, you got him. So Vayimtsaehu Hamorim, these are not rifles they're shooting. This is Anashim Bakeshet. What's a keshet?
Keshet is a
bow.
A bow.
Bow.
What's
Bow.
it? Yeah. What kind of a bow do we normally think of when we say a keshet?
Rainbow.
A rainbow.
Robin Hood.
A rainbow.
Robin
Keshet
Hood.
is what are you saying, Hannah?
Robin Hood.
Robin Hood, yes, that's true. But normally when you say keshet,
No, a longbow, not a crossbow.
no. Never mind what kind of bow it was. Keshet normally is a rainbow. Here it's a bow. I don't know whether it's a crossbow, a long bow, a short bow. It's a bow that shoots arrows anyway. And it got him. It got Shaul. Vayachel ma'od mehamorim. Now this is translated here, and he was very much frightened of the archers. Now that's not the Archers radio program, which has been going even longer than our Shmuel Aleph shiur. It's been going on long, about 60 odd years. The Archers. Anybody listen to the Archers?
Yes.
Used to when I lived.
Yeah.
in
I
England
never ever have listened to the Archers
60
in my
years
entire
ago,
life.
70 years ago.
Yeah. Anyway, he says here he was frightened of the archers.
An
An
everyday story of country folk.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Right. Anyway, what does it say here? It says he was terrified by the archers. It says in the Koran. So the same idea. What does the art scroll say, please?
Just a minute.
Anyone got an art scroll?
Yes, I have.
Okay, what does it say, please? Vayachel.
1 second. Okay. 1 second. Vayachel. Which pasuk?
Pasuk Bet. No, Gimel.
Gimel.
And Shaul was terrified of the archers.
Terrified.
Okay, so they're all saying that
go down heavily against Saul.
they're all
the
saying
archers-
the same. They're all saying the same thing. They're all saying the same thing about.
The archers says he was terrified of the archers.
Okay, so they're all saying that he was terrified, but I'm not sure that that's the right translation. Although I can't, it's a bit difficult for me to argue with everybody. What is the root of that word, vayachel?
Yud, Bet, Lamed.
It's something to do with Chet Lamed something.
Go on. Chet Lamed, yes.
A wish. Isn't it a
What?
wish, Johnny?
Is it the
A
same
wish.
as Ichulim? Is it the same as
Yeah.
Ichulim? Lachem is
Wishing.
to
Ichulin, yeah, it's a wish.
Okay, why would it be a wish? What would that? How would that help you with this translation? And there's no Aleph anyway.
In modern Hebrew, to la'acher is similar to levarech, or to
Yes, Mr. Which percent of it? And you might tell the time my Bible.
repeat
Okay,
that.
here we go.
It's to start, Yechel.
Okay, but coming to start from Hatchala. What about Chet Lamed Hey?
Chala is sick.
Ah, thank you. A chole is. You should have got that quicker, Peter, being a doctor.
Yeah.
You got there in the end, like my son said. Chole. I think it comes from the word chole, to be sick.
Yeah.
And I'm going to show you a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim. I'm going to show you a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim. Divrei Hayamim 2, in fact, chapter 35. Verse 23. There we go. Okay, listen to this. Vayoru hayorim lamelech Yoshiyahu. And the archers, the shooters, shot at the king, Yoshiyahu. Vayom hamelech le'avadav. And he said to his servants, Ha'aviruni, take me away. Ki ha'chaleti ma'od. Ha'chaleti ma'od. And he says, I am sorely stricken here. It means I'm badly injured. I'm chole, I'm sick. And so I think our pasuk here is better translated, Vayachel ma'od mehamorim. He was severely injured by the archers. And that fits much, much more than what it says in frightened and terrified, because he's been shot. Vayimtsaehu hamorim. They found their target. He's already been shot. Okay, he's been shot. And how do we know he's injured? Well, look at the next pasuk. You're all familiar with this. Even if you didn't know it, you're familiar with this. Next pasuk. Vayomer Shaul lenosei kelav. Shaul said to his armor bearer, his lad, he's with him, his shamus there. Shlof charbacha v'dokreni ba. Draw your sword and stab me with it. Stab me with it. Stab me with your sword. In other words, what's he telling him? Finish me off.
Kill me.
Finish me off. Finish me off. Where's this word? Where do you know this word? Dakreni. What's the root of that?
Litkor is to stab. It's to stab.
Yeah, where do you see that in modern Hebrew?
Litkor is to stab.
Yes.
Every day in the newspaper.
When you are driving, when you're driving, where do you see it?
Oh, Dakranim.
Yes, very good, Peter. If you go go into a car park the wrong way, if you go in the exit,
The wrong way.
you know, you've got those little things that stick up, and when you go out the right way, they go flat, right? Try going in on it. Well, no, don't. But if you were to try going in the out bit, they don't go flat. What do?
They
stab your tires. Yeah.
Puncture your tires.
They puncture your tires, and those are called, Peter?
Dakranim.
Dakranim, same word, dakranim. So he says to his armor bearer, draw your sword and stab me. Why? Pen yavo ha'arelim ha'ela, lest these uncircumcised people, which is a euphemism for the Pelishtim, because they were not circumcised. Goyim, yeah. Lest they would come, uda karuni, and they will stab me. Vahit aluvi, and they will abuse me.
They will abuse my body. Me. Yeah.
So he was worried that they would come and abuse him. And of course, there is good precedent for that. Which of our famous prophets suffered physical abuse by the hand of his captors, the Pelishtim? Shimshon, very good. And what happened to him?
They poked his eyes
His
out.
eyes were poked out.
They poked his eyes out. And how do you think they did that? I reckon they did it by stabbing them with dokreni, the same word. I don't think it said that word, but they made him blind. And then what did they do? They tied him to a millstone and they treated him like a donkey, and he had to go around the millstone like a donkey. And that was a massive chilul Hashem, because then everybody was laughing at him and saying, look at the great Shimshon, look at the great Gibor Yisrael, how the mighty are fallen and all that stuff. And Shaul did not want that. Shaul did not want there to be a massive chilul Hashem. He didn't want the king of Israel to be abused. In the end, they abused him anyway, but he didn't want them to abuse him during his life. So he says to his weapon bearer, you kill me. Rather than be killed by them, you kill me. We've got other examples of that. We're coming up, obviously, to Tisha B'Av. One of the postscript stories to the destruction of the temple, of course, was the story of Masada, where the people on Masada decided to kill each other and themselves rather than be killed by the Romans. This is another example of dying al Kiddush Hashem and trying to prevent Achilul Hashem. And so Saul says to his man, kill me, but velo ava nosei kelav. He didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do it. Ki yarei ma'od. He was very fearful. What was he fearful of?
Of killing his king. You don't do that. You don't just do that.
You don't, there might be heavenly retribution to that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a rock and a hard place, isn't it?
Your own
the king tells you to do something, you've got to do it. Otherwise, you're morid b'malchus. You've rebelled against the king. But if the king tells you to kill him, what are you meant to do with that? So it's not an easy decision. Anyway, he was very frightened and he didn't do it.
It's treason.
Well, it's treason not to do what the king tells you to do.
By the way, when Shaul asked him to kill him, it says in the art scroll that they'll kill him and they'll make sport of me.
Yeah, hitalalubo b. Yeah, they will mock me. It says here, make sport of me. Yeah, it's abuse. Yeah, making fun of him. That's what they did with Shimshon. They made fun of him.
Yeah.
They made him into a donkey. And that he didn't. And that for that, the fact that Shaul prevented the king of Israel being made into a laughing stock, that was considered to be a good thing. And so we have here, Vayikach Shaul et hacherev vayipol aleha, and Saul took the sword and he fell upon it. Here is the origin of the expression to fall on one's sword. An expression which has entered the modern lexicon. It's a very dramatic situation here. Shaul knew the game was up, and he didn't want to be the subject of mockery, and he fell upon his sword. And of course, the modern expression of falling upon one's sword means to resign from a position before you are sacked. So now, does anybody remember in what was this one all about? Oh, that one we've done. Okay. Does anybody remember where we have somebody who asks his armor bearer to kill him before in Tanakh? We've done this together a very long time ago. Anybody remember? All the way back in Sefer Shoftim. Probably, I'm guessing this, maybe 2017 or something like that we did this. There it is on the screen for you. This was Avimelech, and he came along, and there was they were fighting against the, who were they fighting against? The Shechem, and they came to this place, and there was a tower, and they went to try and battle through this tower. And verse 53 there, Vatishlach Isha Achat Pelech Rechev al Rosh Avimelech. And this woman threw a big stone on the head of Avimelech. Vatirat said Gulgalato, and he crushed his skull. And he was dying of his wounds. And he called Vayikra Mehira Alanar Nosei Kilav, same words. He called to the armor bearer, Vayoma Alon, he said to him, Shlof Charbacha Umotateni, draw your sword and kill me. Why? Pen Yomruli, in case they say about me, Isha Haragatu, a woman killed him. Oh, that's a terrible thing to say, that he was killed by a woman. So this time, on this occasion, the armor bearer did not hesitate. Vayid Karehu Na'aro, same word, Dakar here. Vayid Karehu Na'aro, and his servant, his armor bearer, pierced him, vayamot, and he died. So here we've got the same idea. Only on this case, this was just the biggest chilul Hashem, to be killed by a woman. Fancy that? That's terrible. So he wasn't having that, and he got his armor bearer to kill him. So Shaul falls on his sword, and so his very loyal servant, Vayan Nosei Kilav Kimet Shaul, his loyal armor bearer. By the way, who was his previous armor bearer? We're not told who this fellow is. We're not told his name. Who was the previous armor bearer? Or not necessarily the one immediately before him, but a previous armor bearer.
Something with an Aleph.
How about something with a Dalad?
No,
David.
David. Yes, right at the beginning, after he kills Goliath, he is appointed by Shaul as his personal armor bearer. This is not David, obviously, a different armor bearer. That was just an aside. So this armor bearer here, he sees that Shaul has died, vayipol gamhu al charbo, and he also falls on his sword, vayamot imo, and he dies with him. A loyal servant to the end, he dies with his master. And then we see a statement of fact which tells us the fulfillment of the prophecy of Shmuel from chapter 28. Vayamot Shaul ushloshet banav v'nosei chelav gam kol anashav b'yom hahu yachdav. Saul and his 3 sons and his armor bearer died, and all of his men also died on that day. And as Shmuel predicted, the following day, Shaul and his sons were indeed with Shmuel in the afterworld. Now, to go back to that, you could you not? Let's just go back to the chapter 28 for a second. What does he say? Here we go, verse 19. You and your sons will be with me. Now, if you were at the end of your life and Shmuel Hanavi were to appear and say, tomorrow you're going to die and you're going to be with me, you wouldn't want to die, because we do not glorify death in Judaism. But if you're going to die, to be with Shmuel sounds a pretty good deal, right? Because Shmuel ain't going to be in Gehenna, is he? Shmuel's going to be up there in the first row. So you could argue that this prophecy here in verse 19, you and your sons will be with me, is a little bit of a double-edged sword, if you'll pardon the pun, in that, yes, you're going to die tomorrow, but you'll be with me. You will die as a hero. You will receive your reward. You'll be with me up here. I think one of you said up here in the heavens when I asked you where he would be. And so I think that this idea of you'll be with me, says Shmuel, I think it's a word of comfort. I think it's a prophecy of comfort in a way to Shaul, and maybe that's what gave Shaul the courage to do what he did, because what he did in our chapter, in chapter 31, let's go back to it now. What he did in chapter 31 was very courageous. He went to battle knowing he was going to lose. He fell on his sword in order to prevent a chilul Hashem. And it took a great deal of courage to do that. And this, as I said earlier, is, I think, what saves Shaul's legacy. We all make mistakes in our lives. Shaul, at the end of his life, came good and did what he had to do. And I just wonder whether that prophecy from Shmuel was what gave him the courage to do it. I haven't seen that written anywhere. It's just my own thoughts about it. Yes, Philip. Yes, Philip.
I've got a question. In the yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. I've got a question. In the Jewish religion, suicide is a chet, is a sin. Actually, Shaul committed suicide here. So
yeah,
it might be an act of bravery, but at the same time, it's an act of cowardice.
Okay, it's a fair comment that you raise.
What?
It's a fair comment that you raise. Is this particular episode is brought by many of the modern day poskim when they are discussing the idea of euthanasia, the idea of being ending somebody's life, physician-assisted. What do they call it? Physician-assisted death. They call it now.
Assisted suicide.
Assisted suicide. And many of the poskim who discuss this very complicated issue do bring this episode of Shaul falling on his sword, but you can argue it both ways. You could say that this is a proof that when you are on death's door and there is no hope for you, then it is permitted for you to take your life because that's what Shaul did. On the other hand, you can say, well, no, that's only in Shaul's case where he says, the reason I want you to do this is because I don't want to become a mockery and I'm the king of Israel and it will be a chilul Hashem. So it's a double-edged sword and you can argue it both ways. Now, we don't have the time. This is not the place to go through the whole dinim of assisted suicide. It's a very interesting topic, which is very fluid. It's changing all the time, certainly changing in the modern world. It's becoming much, much more acceptable. Many places in the world now have a legislation which permits physician-assisted suicide. That is not the case in Israel. It's not the case in the UK. It is the case in certain states in Australia. Victoria and Western Australia have physician-assisted death statutes. There is circumstances that can be done.
Some cases in Belgium also.
Belgium as well, certainly Switzerland. You can go to Dignitas and get yourself done in there if you want. So it's definitely a new field, and you know, you've got to worry when your children offer you a one-way ticket to Switzerland. You've got to worry about it. But down here in Israel, it's not. So it's yes, you raise a good point, Philip. Suicide is not permitted but of course, like everything else, it's a very nuanced issue. Maybe one day we'll do a full shiur, maybe Adler will sort that out for us. We'll do a special shiur on physician-assisted suicide one of these days. Okay, let's carry on.
So, Johnny.
Yes, David.
Yeah, this is brought out here by in the Koran. The source of the mitzvah of not committing suicide is one of the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. You'll find it in Bereshit chapter 9, verse 5. And it starts with the word va'ach. Va'achet imachem lenashot echem edrosh miyad kol chayad v'shenu miyad adam miyad yisachim edrosh et nefesh ha'adam.
Hang on a sec, David. Hang on a sec. Let's just translate that for everyone. It's on the screen for you here, verse 5. But your blood of your souls I will demand an account. From the hand of every beast I will demand it. From the hand of every man, from the hand of each man his brother, I will demand the soul of man. Go on, David.
Okay, and there's a dispute amongst Tanaim whether this is a general rule for everyone, or whether the word ach, which is exclusive, is to deal with situations like Shaul, like Mishael and Azariah, who are committing suicide al Kiddush Hashem.
Right. Okay. Well, we do have throughout history, don't we, episodes of suicide al Kiddush Hashem. We talked about Masada, York Cathedral comes to my mind. There were various different stories that one has heard of during the Crusades and during the Holocaust. The Crusades, of course, were going to say the Kinot, which commemorates the Mainz, Worm, and Speyer communities in the Rhineland, where they all took refuge in the bishop's castle, and eventually a lot of them committed suicide there rather than be killed. And that's a suicide al Kiddush Hashem. In the Holocaust as well, there were many examples of people committing suicide rather than be captured. And so what you're saying, David, is that this is the source, this word ach, which is a limitation. Ach is a limitation. So what you're saying here is this is the source of the exclusion from what Philip said is correct, that suicide, generally speaking, is an aveira. This is an exclusion to that when you're doing it al Kiddush Hashem.
Yeah, this is brought down in detail by Dan.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, excellent. Let's go back.
You also have the cases of soldiers who've thrown themselves on grenades to protect the other soldiers that are with them, and that's saving their lives. So in a sense, they've also killed themselves in the effort of saving other people's lives. Correct.
That's another example of a Gibor Yisrael. Okay, let's carry on. I want to finish this before the end of the shiur. Okay, so then what happened then was Vayiru Anshe Yisrael Asher Ba'eva Ha'emek Asher Ba'eva Yarden Ki Nasu Anshe Yisrael. The men on the other side of the valley who weren't fighting, they were the onlookers, if you like. They saw that their men on the other side were fleeing, and they also saw that Shaul and his 3 sons had died. So what did they do? Vayazvu et ha'arim vayanusu. There's that word again. They left the cities and they ran away. They fled. Vayavo plishtim vayeshvu bahen. And the Philistines came and occupied the cities that we had abandoned. That sounds a little bit, without getting into politics, a little bit like 2005 to me, with the disengagement from Gaza. We abandoned the cities. The Plishtim, or their successors, came in and occupied them. You could argue, or the enemy would argue, that that's what happened in 1948. They ran away and we occupied their cities. Ein chadash tachat hashemesh, there's nothing new under the sun.
And you can bring this into the current situation as well.
I have a question.
1 second, Philip. 1 second. Yes. Let's just talk about 1 second, Philip. I'll come to you in a minute. So yeah, David's got a point. We've abandoned. Well, we're not abandoned. We have evacuated cities up north. We dare not abandon them, because if we abandon them, then they will be occupied. You're quite right. Yes, Philip. Philip, you wanted to say something? You're muted.
Never mind.
You can hear me now? Yeah. You just said the Plishtim or their successors. There's a misunderstanding here. Palestinians are not the successors of the Plishtim. The Plishtim were Phoenicians.
I didn't mean successors.
They came
from. I meant successors in the sense that they are our enemies. That's all. Yeah. Okay, carry on. Vayihimi macharat, and it was the next day. Vayavo plishtim lefashet et hachalalim. So the Plishtim then came in, and this is what you do: you strip down the corpses, you take the booty, what's on them. And they found Saul and his sons lying on Mount Gilboa. And so what do you do? And there's lots of precedent for this in Tanakh. In order to boost your morale, what would we do with the head of Hania if we could? We'd stick it on a pole and parade it through the streets. And that's what they wanted to do here with Shaul. Vayichrutu et rosho, they cut his head off. Vayafshitu et keilav, and they stripped his armor. Vayashalchu be'eretz plishtim saviv, and they sent it all around. They went on a tour with Shaul's head. Lefaser beit atzbeihem be'et ha'am, to spread the tidings to the people that Shaul was dead. They paraded his remains, his head. Vayasimu et keilav beit ashtarot, and they put his armor in the temple. We've got precedent for that in our own chapter. Where do we see the precedent for that in our own chapter? In our own book, I mean, not in this chapter, in the book of Shmuel. Where do we see that?
The sword of Goliath.
Very good. Excellent, Paul. The sword of Goliath was in the city of Nov. Remember? In fact, a lot of good it did them. Shaul came and killed them all. Oh, Doeg came and killed them all. Yes, they put Goliath's sword in the temple or in the Mishkan in Nov. So here it's the same thing. They sent the armor of Shaul to their temple, and they impaled his body on the wall at Bet Shan.
There you go.
Okay. And hang on a minute, let me just mute her. Right, okay. And so that was a big Chilul Hashem. And so Vayishma'u Elav Yoshvei Yavesh Gilad, and Yavesh Gilad heard about this, what the Eita Sha'asu Plishtim Shaul, what they'd done to Shaul. Vayakumu Kol Ish Chayil, and every brave man. Ish Chayil. What does that sound like to you?
Eshet Chayil.
Eshet Chayil. This is the male version of Eshet Chayil. A woman of valor. There's a man of valor. Okay, these are brave men. The brave men of Yavesh Gilad got up, Vayelchu Kol Halayla, and they went all night. Vayikchu et Gviat Shaul, and they took Shaul's body. They rescued his body. Veit Gviat Banav, and the bodies of his sons. Mechomat Beit Shan, from the walls of Beit Shan. Vayavohu Yavesha Vayisrafu otam Sham, and they brought them to Yavesh. We'll come back to it where it says it, and they burned them there. We'll come back to the burning in a minute. Vayikchu et atzmoteihem, and they took their bones. Vayikbaru tachat ha'eshel, and they buried him underneath a tree. Vayavesha in Yavesh. Vayatsumu shivat yamim, and they fasted 7 days. Here we learn the importance of regaining the bodies of the fallen soldiers. Very, very poignant for us today. In our community, especially, we have Itai Chain, Hashem Yikam Damav, Itai Chain, who was killed on the 7th of October. His body remains in captivity in Gaza. It is imperative that there are Anshei Chayil, brave men, who will take brave decisions. I wouldn't like to be the one that has to take these decisions, but brave men have to take these decisions, and we have to do whatever we can do to bring back the bodies of the slain. We have precedent for it here, right at the end of Shmuel Aleph. The brave men of Yavesh Gilad. Why particularly Yavesh Gilad? Why particularly were these people braver than anybody else to go and get Shaul's body? Where have you heard Yavesh Gilad before? There it is, chapter 11 of Shmuel Aleph. We probably did that about 2 years ago. The story that this Nachash the Ammonite attacked Yavesh Gilad. Remember the story about cutting off the fingers? And who actually saved Yavesh Gilad on that occasion? Shaul.
Shaul.
And Jonathan. Shaul and Jonathan. They were the ones that saved them. And at the end of that chapter, okay, what happened there was all the people went to Gilgal, and there they made Shaul king. And Shaul was there anointed. So this, in some ways, at the end of Shaul's life, is a closing of the circle. At the beginning of Shaul's reign, he was brave. He was taller than anybody else. He was unassuming. He was modest, and he saved the people of Yavesh Gilad. He then went through a difficult time. He was envious of David being more popular than he was. He saw David as an enemy. He became mentally unstable. He tried to kill David. He didn't act well with the city of Nov. And at the end, he finds his bravery again. He dies a hero's death. And the people of Yavesh Gilad, they repay his bravery from the beginning of his reign, and they go out, they rescue his body, and they bring them back for burial under the tree in Yavesh. And he also gets a proper Shiv'ah. They fasted for 7 days. The only difficulty we've got here is Vayisrafu otam sham. They burned the bodies before they buried them. It's a bit difficult. We don't go in for burning bodies, as you know. Various different explanations, none of them particularly satisfactory. But it seems that by the time they got these bodies, they were pretty unpleasant and mangled. And it seems that one of the things they did was they burned off the flesh so it wouldn't be so disgusting and putrefying. And when there was just the bones, they buried the bones of Shaul and his sons.
Anyway.
And so we come exactly at 11:15. We come to the end of chapter 31 and the end of chapter Shmuel Aleph. And so before we have our L'chaim,
could it be that that although the Plishtim looted the bodies, they were still clothed, and that they burned the clothing?
Doesn't say that. It says their bodies. Et Gviat Shaul. Gviat is the body. Vayavo Yavesha Vayisrafu Otam Sham. It seems that Mefarshim all seem to say that they did burn the flesh. Maybe that's an explanation. Maybe it wasn't their flesh, but it was their uniforms. By the way, since you mentioned that, a Israeli soldier who is killed in battle is buried in his uniform. The rest of us will be buried after 120 in tachrichim, in shrouds. But the Israeli soldiers who die are buried in their uniform that they died in, because that is their, if you like, that is their passage to Gan Eden. Lo Aleinu, we should not know of such a thing. So, at the end of 4 years and 8 months and 1 hour, we shall now drink a L'chaim. We'll drink a L'chaim to Shmuel Aleph. We've really, I think, done it justice. I think we could say we've not left any stone unturned. We will. I'm going to have a L'chaim now, and then I'm going to tell you what we're going to do next. So, L'chaim.
Amen.
L'chaim. Okay, so what we're going to do next, I'll just stop the recording, I think, because we don't really need to do this. Stop the recording. How do we do that? There we go. Stop recording.